Hello, everyone. Welcome to night 44, the final night of the Orphan's Tales quarantine reading series. We did it! We're here! We made it! I'm definitely sure I have lipstick on my teeth this time. The final night. It finally happened. Sorry, everybody. Ooh, so professional. Okay, I tried to have something festive, like confetti or something, but I just couldn't find anything. I still have my birthday hat, but I don't have anything. So in true fairy tale fashion, I brought my jewels and my animals. I have my bear paws on. The finale lipstick that is all over my teeth is Snow White by NYX. So yes, I have my bear paws on. My son loves these. He gives them to me constantly and tells me to be a bear. He goes, "Mummy, rawr," likes me to chase him and grab him with my bear paws. So I'm much like Sigrid, secretly a bear tonight. And I brought a beautiful piece of jewelry. With my bear paws, I can't get it on. But it's a lovely bracelet. It fits on. And then it's secretly my drink for the night. It unscrews and it's a Izzy flask. So there is some festiveness this evening. And we are listening to Esther Tucker and A Ship Full of Monsters, which is an incredible song that concludes her album based on this book. And this book. I can't believe it. I can't believe we're this close to the end, guys. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's madness. I'm not even, I don't know that I've heard of anything like this. I'm just reading a 500-page book online, streaming, once a night. Yeah. I feel like I can't talk when Esther's singing. Welcome for those of you who are here for the first time. I know there will be some of you. It's all in the archive. You can catch up completely. The archive is up to date now, and this will be uploaded very quickly after I finish reading it. It'll all be there. As I said before, and I've talked about online a little bit today, I'm still deciding what to do about the second book. It will probably end up being a weekly but longer reading. But I said I'd do it till the lockdown ended, and it's not over yet. So I'm not leaving you guys. I'm just taking a tiny break because this has been a lot to do essentially a 45-minute show every night for 2 months. It's a lot. A little lipstick on the teeth is the least we can expect from such great efforts on both my and your parts. You guys have been here most nights, and I've only been here most nights, so we've done all of this together. So I think weekly and a longer reading is much more doable. So I think that's what we will end up doing. But whether that will start Monday or what day of the week it'll be, I can't say right now. But I'm not leaving you guys. Not leaving the orphan or her tales. We are still pressing forward together. Sail on forever. As the song says. There it is. Bring on the maelstrom and bring on the rum. It's vodka tonight, unfortunately. We are out of rum. We totally did not think ahead to this evening. It was just a crazy, crazy work day. It's such a crazy work day, I already had makeup on tonight. I only had to just reapply lipstick. So let's do our intro nonsense for one last time before I get into the story. As always, say it with me. This is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. It is a one-woman show on closing night, at least temporarily closing night. You can find the song we just listened to, as well as many other beautiful songs, both based on this book, other books of mine, and having nothing at all to do with me, at sjtucker.com. Please support her. She's an amazing artist. She's on Bandcamp and Patreon as well. She's my sister, and you should all be listening to her as well. You can find me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. You can buy these books anywhere that books are sold, but I would prefer, if you care about an author's preferences, that you buy them from your local independent booksellers web portal. If you would like to support my local independent booksellers web portal, it is printbookstore.com. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Kat Valenti as well. There is my best beef Penang curry recipe up there today, and we'll have, the poll says, I will be shredding children's edutainment. Oh no, they're light. No, not tonight, light, not tonight. This is a special night. No, bad light. Yes, we'll be shredding children's edutainment for your entertainment in a few days. And you can catch up with the archive over the weekend at Kat Valenti Live on YouTube. You can ask me questions after the reading, and I very much encourage you to, especially this time. But dead air sucks. Sucks for me, sucks for you. So please think of the questions while I am reading so that we can just roll right into me drinking out of a bracelet flask and laughing at your questions. What else? Oh, well, of course, one last time. There is a tip jar in my Instagram profile, on my YouTube profile, and at my website, which is katherinemvalenti.com. You do not have to tip me in any way. This has all been about connection and you and me and stories. However, as I've said, it's a lot of work to put these together, and being a freelancer is basically like riding a roller coaster without a car right now. So anything that you would like to give would be deeply appreciated if you would like to toss a coin to your witch. Thank you so much to Heather and Amy who tipped me last night. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And anybody who does tip me, well, then the stream will be sometime soon, and I will thank you on the next stream. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much to everybody who has contributed, who has helped us get through this time. I can't tell you what a huge difference it makes. I can't begin to explain the gratitude that I have, both for the people who've tipped and just anybody who's watched. Thank you so much for watching this ridiculous old book that you know, by rights no one should care about anymore. Thank you so much for caring. Thank you for caring about stories. Thank you for caring about connection. Thank you for caring about this let's put on a show attitude that all artists have had to cultivate during the global pandemic that is happening and still happening and continuing to happen. I also cannot tell you what it's meant to me to just have somewhere I have to be every night and people to talk to, even if I can't hear you talk back so well. Thank you so much. This has been very, very special. It's been unique. It's been extraordinary. It's been a journey into the past and the future. And if the Orphan's Tales is about anything, it's about connections. You know, both between all our tales, all of our tales that run on concurrently and independently of each other, and yet come together moment by moment to be part of one another. And I'm so glad to have been part of your tale. And I'm so, so grateful that you've been part of mine. So from one bear to another, rawr, this has been amazing. And it's not over. Not over. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Let's get started. I actually probably should have gotten myself some water. I was so excited about using my flask. This was a Mother's Day present from one of my best friends that I forgot to get something to just moisten my throat. So pardon me for a second. Stories never end and we are all connected. You know, when I sign these books, every time a book comes out, I have something that develops that is kind of a universal way of signing it. I usually have 2 or 3 so that I can sort of change it up depending on the situation. And not for, you know, things where very personal signatures come into it, but just, you know, something to say in the book for anybody. And the one for the final book of The Orphan's Tales is "No true tale ever ends." And that is what The Orphan's Tales sort of has to say in the end, that everything goes on, it all goes on, nothing ever stops. Nothing, not even us. I love you all so much. All right, let's get ready to bear and boat. Bears and boats, bears and boats. party hat. But it's broken, so it would have to just balance on my head, which is not flat. In the garden. Don't stop, the boy gasped, his breath coming quick and fast as a galloping colt. The girl frowned, creases forming in the inky expanse of her eyelids like constellations. Her glance flitted into the chamber, resting on the sleeping form of Dinarzad, whose hands moved fitfully over bronze keys. If I'm caught here, I will protect you. I'm as brave as any Sigrid. Do you think I can't? The girl paused tactfully. I think that's very brave. But you do not really understand. Have you forgotten how you used to be afraid of me? The boy felt his cheeks burn. Only a little, he mumbled, picking at stray pebbles on the windowsill, trying to imagine that they were low shen pieces. The night was black as saddle oil all around, and only their eyes gleamed. She's fast asleep, the boy cajoled, leaning across the window's threshold, close to the girl until he could smell her wildness, the scent of tree and stone which clung to her. Tell me the end. The pale girl's tale continued. When the shadow and spume cleared from the eyes of the four creatures on board the little ship, the world had changed around them. This is to say, they had passed into a new world. The belly of the sea monster was vast, so vast they could only see the flank which was near to them, ribs curving upwards, taller than cathedrals. The other was lost in mist, and the ceiling arched high above them like a starless sky. The stomach fluid of the beast made an inland sea, its waves green and brown, noxious and steaming. A schooner drifted through the oily waters, pushing aside flotsam with its prow. The smell was of rotting fish and kelp, and skeletons of unnameable things, things which had never seen the sun on the surface of the ocean, floating by as snow stared over the edge of the hellish soup. Sigrid did not lean over the rail to gawk at the accumulated trash of a life spent roaming at sea. She had taken the wheel and now looked straight ahead, eyes hawk-wide, at the wreckage laid out before them. It was a city of skeleton ships, each bobbing in its own rhythm on the bile sea. Some were gray and crumbling with age, bones still gripping the wheel, skulls rolling back and forth over the decks in hypnotic repetition. Others were not so old at all. Their paint was still bright in patches, the figures slumped over the crows' nests, and bowsprits were swollen and putrid, swarmed over with flies. The schooner passed without a sound through this necropolis, her crew agape. Eyvind finally covered his eyes when he could witness no more dead. But Sigrid had fixed her eye on a ship not far distant. Among all these ghost ships, one still had its lanterns lit, and the orange light spilled out over the brackish water, fire dancing on the slick of the monster's gluttony. And voices could be heard, cheerful and raucous, shouts of glee and mirth. Snow's heart pounded within her. With aching slowness, they drew closer to the mystery ship, and she dared to hope that it would be red. Red as old dreams. But when they finally came within full sight of the galleon, for a galleon it was, and as beautiful a ship as had ever been built by hand or bow, it was not red, but white. The surface of the ship, its beams, its sails and lines, even its figurehead, a woman with the head of a fox, arms extended high into the air to grip the prow in her fists, was caked with barnacles, glutted with them, like a flower in full seed. The living mast was coated in the white miasma, branches choked with it like some foul snowfall. There were not more than patches here and there, where the stony shells had not fixed themselves, where the red sheen of the original ship shone through. It was nearly solid, like armor plating on a war horse. And even Grog looked at the massive creatures in dismay. Yet on the deck of the ship, many figures could be seen moving about, seemingly perfectly healthy and hale. And from the bow, a woman's head appeared, a figure in leather breeches and a billowing white tunic, with skin the color of myrrh. Her tawny eyes were framed by dark hair which fell to her waist and gleamed like nothing so much as a great store of costly spices, and it was knotted through with gold, strung through ornate braids like beads. Just behind her stood a shadowy woman whose very skin seemed to be aflame, her fiery hand poised on the hilt of an enormous sword. But the dark-headed woman beamed at them, her face open and warm. She put her hand on her girlish hip and grinned at the newcomers. "Welcome to the underworld," she said with a laugh. And it was then that Sigrid finally did begin to weep, brought face to face with her saint at last. "That is an odd reaction, if I do say so," St. Sigrid remarked, and gestured for two of her women to lay a plank across the two ships so the newcomers could come aboard. "It's the Maidenhead," Sigrid whispered, in awe as her foot rested on the famed ship's decks, encased as they were in stony white. "Isn't that interesting? You must be one of the Sigrids." The saint looked mildly disapproving, as if stepping delicately over a drunken priest slumped over in her path. Sigrid stared. "You know about the tower?" she gasped. "Tower? I don't know of any tower. But that little cult was springing up even before I became a permanent passenger in this roving whale turtle. They're tiresome, but what can I do to dissuade them? Whenever one does extraordinary things, someone is bound to try to repeat them for themselves. It is the way of the world." Sigrid looked as though she'd been slapped. "I have searched my life over for you, for the saint of the griffins, of the boiling sea, of the red ship. I've never tried to repeat your miracles. I've performed my own. I've only tried to be like you in spirit, to be brave and noble, and to find my place in the world. To find you." The saint leaned in close to Sigrid, her face as round and ruddy as the day she vanished, and laid one finger aside her nose, her mouth spreading into a conspiratorial smile. "Gods are always a disappointment." Grog whipped her tail noisily through her brine, demanding attention like a kid who cannot reach her dam for the suckling of her siblings. "I don't rightly care who you are, you fancy sea dog. Your ship looks like it fell bow first into a barrel of old cheese. Not what I'd call prime captainship, you know, saint or not." The saint glanced dismissively at Grog's gesticulating tail. "Misadventures at sea are as common as apples in autumn." The tale of the captain and the crone. Long-eared Tomomo was the first captain of this ship. We carved that figurehead to remember her, but I'd wager at least one of you already knows that. She was a fine woman, and I loved her. But a fox's place isn't really at sea any more than it's in a palace. She gave the wheel over to me after we had been on the waves together for many a year. Despite many other women being senior to me, she said that a lady should always leave her worldly goods to a daughter, not an aunt or a sister. She touched my hair, just a moment's touch, and went into the forest when we made port with a bag of gold under each arm. I never saw her again, and the Maidenhead was mine. And for a while, our lives were bright as moons reflected in black waters. I suppose it was my fault. I became convinced that we were charmed, that Tommy had gifted us with her fox magic before she left our berths, and like that clever black-nosed fox, we would never be caught. My first mate, Khulud, was always the best of us when it came to finding treasure for us to plunder, and she usually tried to make sure that it was ill-gotten so that we could sleep easy. It is a talent of the jinn. They can smell gold like game in a wood. Unsurprisingly, it was a great number of jinn, led by the great Kashkash, who founded the city of Shadukium in all its jewel-drenched glory. Or so they claim. I have never heard the name of Kashkash except that Khulud swore by him constantly. It was night, after our dinner of roast pork and fresh apples plundered from the stores of some local governor or another, that Khulud took watch with me. We stood in our customary place, smoking, I with my whalebone pipe, and she with the little silver one she had brought with her from the rose-domed city. In the evening she cuts quite a figure, with her hair of smoke and spark, her fiery skin banked to a contented glow, Her eyes could still scald me like a pair of hot tongs, though, and so they did that evening when she told me of her latest scheme. It would be easy, Sigrid. Easier than stealing corn from a crow. There's no one to guard it but an old woman with a lame leg. She couldn't even hobble after us. And the stories I've heard about the treasure she keeps. A magic satchel, plain leather on the outside, but within a supply of gold that never runs dry. By the beard of Kashkash, what madness it would be if we did not seek it out. I drew deeply on my pipe. Khalud, heart of my heart, I know your lust for coin has never failed us, but this sounds like a child's story. We've had a good year. Why go chasing after magic purses when our own, very real purses are full? Do you believe that the purse which brims today will brim for all time? Perhaps you can sleep sweetly, believing it is summer. But my duty does not let me rest, and I must see after our purses in winter as well. And as for magic and children, here we stand on a ship whose mast bears oranges and pomegranates for our pleasure, and a woman of fire speaks to the mother of griffins. As ever, you are wiser than I, you old genie. May the stars grant that you are always here to look after me. Are you taking up religion in your old age, Captain? Hardly. Habit, my love, habit. Thus it was that we set out for a small island in the midst of a murky, misty bay, as they all are, a rocky, barren place, full of slate and basalt, festooned with silver clams and deep blue mussels clinging to the sea-worn stones. In the center of the island was a hut, and that was all that marked out this island from the hundreds of other dead reef shards floating in the ocean. Khalud had traded a vial of her heart's fire for the chart, and when we saw the pitiful little house, we called that too highly bought. There would hardly be a need for blades. I took only my gin ashore. How foolish I was, but it seemed such a desolate place. The wretched hut was thatched in straw and leaves, and poorly thatched at that, as haphazard and tangled as a bird's nest. Its walls were wattle and daub, stinking of dung. It rested on splayed feet that seemed to be a pelican's or a heron's, the talons gripping the slick rocks for purchase. And sitting in the doorway was an ancient woman, her lap full of clapping mussels. Her head was bent so that Khalud and I could not see her face, a mass of ash-gray hair snarling from the crown of her head to her heels. But behind her arms, the crone had long black wings. At their crest bunched small clasping claws, which were something like hands, and at her calves began leathery black talons, which were something like feet. The feathers gleamed in the sun and sea spray. Her clothes were ragged, falling apart, no more than a few strips of animal pelt stitched together with sinew. She grumbled as we approached and slurped the orange flesh from a mussel, pitching its empty shell straight past my head. "Old woman," Khalud announced, speaking before I could. She often did that, so that if some hapless soul were to become enraged with us, they would leap at her before they would cut my own throat. "You've come for the satchel. You can give it to us, or we can take it from you, as you like, but by the flame of Kashkash, we will have it." The old woman tossed another shell, which struck the djinn directly between the eyes. "Oh, yes," the crone growled. "Come and rob an old lady's chest of drawers, eh? So easy to do, is it not? Her bones are chicken riddled, her snap so sweet it's almost music." She chuckled deep in her throat. "Only I am not such an easy mark, my beautiful peacocks. Oh, no." She straightened her hunched back then, the muscles spilling out of her lap and skittering across the rocks. She stood up and threw her head back, and we saw with horror that the face beneath was not withered with age or strung with spittle. It was not even middle-aged, but a hale and grinning man whose eyes flashed black and silver. The mass of hair streamed back over his shoulders, tumbling past his knees. He fluffed his wings impressively, and slung over one feathered shoulder was a fat leather satchel bulging like a wineskin. "Is this what you want, then? A couple of girls playing pirates come to take it from old Gassan, eh? weak and helpless as he is. Yes, you and many others before you. And I'll give it to you without even a fight, if you can match me drink for drink the whole night through. I'm a sporting man, after all. I considered for a moment, sure that he had more tricks than simply costumes. You'll swear to me the purse is magical, I said. It is at that. Now, are you coming in? And just you, mind you. I've no mind to go gambling with fire demons. Or are you going back to your ship to tell your crew you couldn't contend with a meek old woman? He waggled the satchel mockingly from one of his 3-fingered claws and strode back to his hut. Khulud looked sidelong at me with those old coal eyes of hers and pulled a tiny vial from her belt. Heart's fire, she whispered, her voice like the last wisps of smoke from a doused flame. This very morning I bled it from my wrist. A drop in the drink and he'll fall like a rock dropped from a castle tower. I took the dusky orange liquid and slid it into my sleeve, sharing a familiar smirk. And full of folly as a maid who milks a bull, I followed Ghassan into his stinking house. A low table was set with clay cups and a large pitcher the color of birds' tongues. Ghassan sat to one side of it, his wings folded neatly at his sides, beaming at me. Well done. Have a seat, my girl. Try my best vintage, brewed from mussel shells and livers, best the islands have to offer. I knelt and cast my eyes down in demure submission. Among my people, it is customary for the female to serve. Will you allow me? For a moment he looked suspicious, and I was sure he would refuse. But it is difficult for men to disbelieve a woman who insists that she wishes to serve them, and he nodded assent. I took the 2 glasses and filled them with the sickly liquor, which flowed out thickly, a viscous yellow slime. And letting my sleeves droop ever so slightly over them, I let 3 drops from the vial drip into his drink. He took it with pleasure in his stunted hand and quaffed it in one gulp. My appetites are famed the world over, he leered. As is the fact that you are an old woman with bad knees, I countered and quaffed my own muscle brew. We had drunk only 3 times before Ghassan began to reel on the floor, his eyes rolling in his head. I had not even begun to feel dizzy, and he appeared to be ready to vomit or faint or both. You cheated, he gasped, clutching his belly. I stood and laughed at him. Even pretty girls playing at pirates know how to play them well. Ghassan grunted, drooling a bit out of the side of his mouth, and lay down heavily, eyes drooping, his feathers crunching beneath him. Take the satchel, then, you lying wench. I hope you enjoy its fruits. And with that, his body slackened, and his great head with its crown of matted hair crashed to the floor. His snoring filled the little house like a storm beating at its windows. I bent and slung the satchel from his body, pleased with myself, a simple ruse quickly accomplished. I knew nothing. We have an illustration of the satchel here. When I returned to the Maidenhead at Khulud, the crew greeted us with cries of triumph. They crowded around, eager to see the purse perform its magic. I held it over my head for all to see, then thrust my hand inside the thick leather to bring out the first handful of gold. But when I pulled my hand from the satchel, there was no coin in my fist. Instead, my hand was fouled by a thick white ooze. It clung to my skin, my fingers, like a snail's body. A great clump of it had come away with the satchel, and now the leather sack was full of it, overflowing, with pale sludge splashing thickly onto the deck. I wiped my hand quickly on the wheel, disgusted by the stuff, which reeked of fish and salt. And then I saw, we all saw, the slime was hardening wherever it fell and spurting from the satchel like a fountain. It had already covered half the ship, as thick as snowfall, bubbling into strange egg-like shapes and stiffening into the familiar gray-white rocks of barnacles. Of course, I ordered the girls to get the decks clean of it, but nothing they did was of any help, even when they fell to hacking at it with their swords. We were halfway out of the bay by the time the red ship was red no more, and all of us in a panic. Halfway out of the bay when Ghassan woke, too strong, it seemed, to fall beneath Khulud's fire for long, and came screeching out of his hut. Go, go, you stupid hens, carry them as far as you can, carry my babies until they use your ship as a nursery and foul it with their first dung. You fools, steal from an old woman and see what you get. Thieves, villains, I hope they tear open your livers for their birthday breakfast. Sick with dread, Kalud and I stood at the bow of my once beautiful ship and stared after the bird creature who cawed and flapped his huge black wings, cackling in a stiff wind. The Pale Girl's Tale concluded. It was not long after we left Gassan that we encountered the Ignaces. That is not a very interesting story. No story involving a sea monster is. A ship meets the monster, it either escapes or is devoured. We were swallowed whole and found ourselves on this strange sea. But somehow time is stretched here. And it has been hundreds of years. Hundreds of years, and the barnacles have not hatched. We have not aged much. Nothing has changed. We've eaten the creatures the Ignaces eats, and you'd be surprised how many seals and sharks it has swallowed. We've never wanted for food, and from time to time there have been other ships, but none who sought us out as you did. The shadowy woman sidled up to the saint and kept her hand on the hilt of her sword. Snow knew her immediately by her fiery skin. Kalud. Your timing, she said throatily, in a voice like flames rippling, could almost be called providential. Can you not see the creatures stirring in their eggs? The birth is coming. I would swear it by the lamp of Kashkash. Indeed it is. Within the day, I think. I do have some experience with hatching birds. The barnacles have never been so large we can see blackness fluttering within. The saint looked critically at the four strangers. We have decided to attempt our escape. Will you help or hinder us? Sigrid seemed to stifle the urge to fall to her knees. Anything I can do, I will do, my lady. Grog belched. Well, we haven't got any choice, have we? You old trout, a voice came from below decks, quickly followed by a body, a woman with the tail of a wolf, the haunches of a deer, and bright blue wings. Magadan strode across the ship to the Magyar's tub, her gray eyes blazing. I thought I told you to see my ship safely home. You brought her back here to get chewed to pieces, she bellowed. What? Look, this lot kidnapped me. Grog looked away nervously, picking at the scales of her violet tail. I was going to take it back, I swear. They made me come back. Shouldn't you thank me for keeping her bow and stern attached as well as I have? Besides, I hardly expected you to survive, did I? Dead women don't complain. Kalud frowned. We fished her out of the bile, half dead, but taking on monsters is a sacred duty left to us by old Tomomo. We pressed her into service, and she is with us now. Magadan hooked her shaggy arm around the Jinn's smoky waist. It is pleasant to be part of a crew, and not manning every sail yourself. Part of a crew and not a prisoner, not a maiden, not cargo. I died in the whale and washed up on the deck of paradise. This is the best death I could have asked for, and I hoped to stay dead for some time. She smiled and her tail wagged, and there was no weariness left in the lines of her face. Now that we're all family, Eyvind growled, hadn't we better see about getting ourselves wretched out of this beast? An excellent suggestion, the saint said. Within a few hours, both ships had drawn back through the sea of bile close to the mouth of the Ignaces. Eyvind and Grog had stayed aboard the beast-made ship while Sigrid and Snow were huddled close with the pirates. Baleen hung in the distance like a glossy door, and they could hear the sea crashing outside. First, we must raise the monster, said the saint in a hushed voice. Kalud. The Jinn drew a dark, curved bow back almost to the shape of a full moon and lit the arrow from her belly. She fired it directly up into the whale turtle's mouth, and for a moment it simply disappeared into the mist, and there was no sound. But then, a dull, clunking noise echoed through the mouth, and the creature moaned in pain, ascending through the waters to destroy whatever had troubled it. How can we be sure they'll hatch? Snow whispered, clutching Sigrid's hand to calm her heart. The saint looked grim and glad all at once, drawing a dagger from a sheath bound to her thigh. Well, We aren't going to let them dawdle. The eggs should be weak enough now for them to break out, or for us to break in. Get yourself a knife, girl. Grog hollered at Avin to drag her to the side of the ship and began to smash the barnacle eggs with hurled harpoons. Every creature on the Maidenhead was slashing, clawing, cutting, crushing the eggs. Khulud flicked her fingers at one after another, engulfing them in little orange flames. The sickening crunch of it made Snow gag, and the smell was worse, like overripe meat. At first it was slow, just a few black infants hopping out of their shells, and then the roaring sound of thousands of wings filled the mouth of the Ignaces, doubled and tripled with echoes. It was the saint who laughed first, and then the djinn joined her. They saw, and soon could all see, a great flock of crows rising from the ruined barnacles, their huge wings flapping noisily like pages turning. More and more of them shattered their eggs of their own accord, eager to join their siblings. Countless wings beat against the wall of Baleen, the arched roof, the cheeks of their prison. The mouth was filled with them as with a draught of fouled wine, and the monster began to roar in rage, a guttural sound like the earth opening. And it did open. The Ignaces' jaw cracked slightly. A blinding sliver of light seared across the two ships. The sliver became awash as the mouth opened wide and the sea rushed in, the sparkling blue and gray and white buffeting the ships on its waves. There was a great cheer from the crew of the Maidenhead, and the sails were drawn tight. And here we have an amazing illustration of the crows and the ship. A wind wrestled the rigging of the other vessel, and when the sea flowed out again, they rode the crest of the foam out into the sun and into the world. With them, thousands upon thousands of gleaming black crows streamed out of the mouth of the Ignaces, heralding the ships and following them, soaring up and out of the whale like an exhalation of dark angels. The sound of their flapping wings was like grape shot. The sunlight caught their feathers and glowed deep violet against a pale sky. The monster groaned, almost a whimper, and sank again below the surface as the ship sped away with taut sails. And so, as quickly as the birth began, it was finished. The red ship and the brown floated together in the broad light some space away from the place where the monster had submerged, lashed together so that farewells could be made. A few lingering crows circled overhead. The sun was setting over the sea. Its light pooled over the water, unfurling itself like a glove, staining the sea a perfect shade of gold, as if a lady had dropped her best necklace into the depths. The golden light flooded over the deck of the Maidenhead, and Avin's eyes filled with tears. The Virgin was devoured, he said wonderingly, gesturing at the red ship. The saints will go west with endless eggs, and the sea, his voice tightened, has gone to gold. Avin seemed to shimmer and to wriggle like a worm spasming on a hook, and then there was no Avin any longer. A great white bear stood in his place, tears streaming from its large black eyes. Its fur was smooth and snowy, illuminated with light and sea spray. The timbers groaned under the sudden weight. Sigrid cried out and crossed the plank from the red ship to the witch's kiss, sinking to her knees and touching his furry face. The bear closed his eyes and laid his head heavily in his lover's lap. It's happened, he sighed, his voice changing to something deeper and rougher now that it was his own again, more growl than tongue. And now we can go home. At last we can go home. We'll go to the skin peddler. You'll ask for your skin again. We'll go back to the snows and the wilds together. It's over. Sigrid took her hands away slowly. No, Eyvind, I cannot. I am not Ulla, and I never will be again. I go with my lady as I was meant to. The maiden, the bear, and the girl in grey. You must find your own way now. Do not leave me, bear wife. All I have done has been for you. He lifted his limpid eyes to her, stricken. All you have done for yourself, so that you could be again as you thought you should. I cannot be part of that dream. All I have done, All I have done by instinct and desire, save for what I have done for her. She is the object of my quest, and I cannot reject it now. I feel as though I am being split apart again, my skins warring with each other. But I am sorry, my love. There's just no getting any of it back. She stood and stroked his coarse white head, bent and kissed it, her tears wetting the fur through. He begged her and clutched at her uselessly with his clumsy paws. Where will I go? What will I do? He whispered hopelessly. Sigrid shook her head, unable to give an answer. She crossed back to the red ship with its carpet of broken shells. The saint embraced her, and Sigrid came away from that embrace, glowing like a new bride. Come on then, Bear, Grog said with a sigh, sprinkling a bit of brine over her chest. Seems you and I are going home lonesome. Snow, get on the boat, child. I've no taste for blubbering send-offs. But Snow, her pale hair catching the last light of sun, stepped backward into Sigrid's arms. I'm staying, she said uncertainly. Miran is not my home. There's nothing for me there. If the captain will take me, I will call this ship mother and father. Perhaps some morning I will wake up and my body will have flushed dark and rose again. She smiled, and the smile warmed her face like a swinging lantern. Of course we'll take you, the saint said. Tommy bade us never turn away a recruit. We are a family of monsters, and the birth of new beasts is a cause for joy. There is so much for us yet to do. The sea and the tide are ours again. The planks were unlashed, and the ship separated like twins within their mother's womb. The Maidenhead sailed west, her sails blazing with light. Grog and Eyvind remained on the dilapidated Witch's Kiss, turning east, away from the sun and into the glowing night. The Magyar looked after the bear, who stood on the foredeck, staring after the red smear of the receding ship, his great shoulders slumped in grief. Come on, love, she said, feeling strangely tender suddenly. I'll take you home. Miran is not my home either. But I am not monster enough, it seems, to be offered a place at sea. Grog searched for a grain in the boards, uncomfortable with his mourning. Then I'll take you north, Evie, she said brightly, her voice like buttered rum, to your real home. You can go back now, right? Rest with your own people. That's something, don't you think? Don't you miss the stars a-shining on the glaciers like 1,000 candles? Eyvind turned his ursine head toward her. I do, he admitted. Then I steer north, old bear, and when you've felt the snow beneath your paws again, the world won't seem so black. At least that's my guess. Who can tell with your lot? Grog ran a hand through her green hair. The white bear walked gingerly over the decks to her tub and settled his bulk down next to it. He laid his head on the wooden rim, and as the last ribbons of day unwound from the sky, he slept. In the garden. Dawn stole through the violet curtains, staining them red as calf's blood. The girl sat on the damp grass, her face ringed in orange and gold, smiling up at the boy as he sat in his window, shaded from the warm day which still grew like a fat child. That was a wonderful story, he cried a little too loudly. The girl hushed him, leaping up and laying her finger over his lips. He thrilled at her touch like dry wood touched by a spark. They looked at each other for a moment, her dark-rimmed eyes seeming to swallow him until he saw the sun no more, only those twin moons, shadowed and secret. She took her hand from his face and stretched her limbs like a young lion. Yes, and I shall tell you another, even more strange and more wonderful, tomorrow, if you return to the garden, to the night, and to me. She turned and ran back up the cypress path, past the stable, into the rows of dew-strung apple trees, her gray skirts trailing behind her. The boy shivered with delight, his skin full of goose flesh in the chill morning, and climbed back beneath his furs to dream of a red ship sailing into the sun. Dinarzade lay awake, still as death in her bed, and her eyes were full of tears. The end. Of course, the I shall tell you another even more strange and more wonderful tomorrow is what Scheherazade says at the end of every night of her stories. Dinarzade is also Scheherazade's sister. In the Arabian Nights, there's lots of little bits like that, but that's a big one. Open up my sparkly flask. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? I'm glad that you like that section. It's definitely such an odd thing to write a book of fairy tales, because fairy tales, the way that they're told is not the way modern fiction is told. So things happen very quickly in fairy tales, and so the end happens very quickly. But I'm so glad you guys liked it. We made it to the end. It's crazy, madness, absurdity. I mentioned that I have an unpublished novel on my computer, The Alchemy of Winter. Is there any way to post that for purchasing readers on your Patreon, or is that a publishing? No, it's not. I posted... Did I actually post the whole... I don't think I posted the whole thing. I posted a chapter of it at one point. I mean, I could. I'm not sure if it's any good, honestly, at this point. I wrote it ages ago. I was still living in Cleveland, so I guess I must have written it like 2007? Maybe 2008. My agent told me that I should write a YA novel, so I did. We couldn't sell it. It's not my agent at the time. And then that book, that unpublished manuscript, is how I got the agent that I have now, because my agent before sucked. I haven't looked at it in all those years. My agent is still quite sad that we've never found a home for it, but I'm not sure that it has any real quality, but possibly. Did I write The Heresy of the Lost, or did S.J.? I wrote the poem in the book. S.J. wrote the song Shipful of Monsters. I don't remember what The Heresy of the Lost is, honestly. I'm sorry. I'm a terrible person who can't remember her own work. I don't know. The poem in the book is definitely mine. And then S.J. adapted a bunch of stuff and added her own and added music, and that tended to be how our processes worked. But the poem in the book is mine, which I think is what The Heresy of the Lost is. I'm such a disappointment as an author. Like I just don't remember my own stuff. But yeah, I think that's what you mean. Everything you write's literary gold. God, I wish that were true. It never feels that way. I have terrible crises of confidence about my own work these days. Man, when I wrote this book, I thought I knew everything, but I do not. I like the Black Pappas too. She's a lovely character. Did I find gloves that look like Tom's gloves, or did someone make them? No. This was not a birthday present from Heath. It was a different day present. I can't remember what the occasion was. Maybe Valentine's Day? Not sure. There were two of them, but our dog ate the other pair. So, yeah. But our son loves them. So it's quite something to have a 20-month-old kid throw a pair of bear gloves at you and insist that you roar and chase him. But yeah, someone said that I am their favorite author. That's very, very kind of you. There are days where I feel like I earn that, and there are days where I feel like I don't. I mean, everybody in their own work. Some days, man, you just feel it. Like, I crushed it today. I wrote something really good. And then there's other days where it's just like, there certainly are words on a page. Hopefully they remain those words in the final draft. Writing is a constant ego melting experience. But I am very glad that you all appreciated it so much, and that you care to listen to this book, all these years later. I do remember that the barnacle eggs are actually from a medieval bestiary. They did think that they were seabird eggs at one point, which I guess is not a terrible assumption to make. So I did get that from I love medieval bestiaries because they combine real animals with just like meh, could be theories on how they worked. The mothers licking their baby bears into life is another one that ended up in palimpsest. Oh, well, those are so lovely, lovely things to say. Oh, reading every night for no, it's 45 nights, so it's 6 weeks. I mean, it is. I've never done anything like that. I keep saying that it's a one woman play, and that's tongue in cheek, but it is a bit, you know. It's a very small venue. If you could see how small this room actually is, it's a very, very small venue, very quiet audience, but appreciative, and they give us a real good deal on the concessions. And I've never done a show every night for 6 weeks. SJ and I, when we were touring for Palimpsest, the tour was much longer than that, but we didn't perform every night. And the show was never the same twice. So it's a very different sort of thing. And when you have someone, you know, backing you up, who's an amazing guitar player, and we had our cellist with us a lot of the time, and Vixie was with us, and like it was we were the circus. That's different than sitting here quietly in a room where there's no one to clap for you in the bookends. Oh, thank you for saying that I read well. I acted for many a year. I know how to do the word thing, but yeah, it's been quite something. It's been quite something. Cat Valenti Bestiary. Then I would have to remember my own books, which if you've learned nothing else from this series, you know I cannot do. I cannot even remember the book that I just read you. Yeah, no, somebody else could. That would be great. I mean, I've seen people like there are wikis of the Orphan's Tales where every story is broken down into how it nests into the other stories and everything, and that's cool. I never did that. That seemed like way too much work. That is not how my brain works at all. But I am so impressed that other people have done it. Is Bastian named after Bastian Balthazar Bucks? Yes and no. Sebastian's been my favorite boy's name for some time. I didn't ever use it in a book, except I kind of used it a little bit in the space opera. I didn't ever use it in a book because I thought maybe if I had a little boy one day that I would want to name him Sebastian. But I always knew that his nickname would be Bastian after Bastian Balthazar Bucks from the Neverending Story. Heath was kind of against the name Sebastian at first, but he came around. Yeah, so it's and you know, it's not even because Sebastian means something particularly good. It doesn't. You know, it's a place name. But I just love the sound of it. I always have. Oh, I mean, I think you could make a great board book of medieval bestiary creatures, but people don't like to confuse little kids about like what animals are actually like, because bestiaries have griffins and they have barnacle geese and things like that. That's what they're called, barnacle geese. But you know, they also have bears and lions and giraffes, but people didn't actually know what bears and lions and giraffes were like in Europe, so they guessed. And they also did illustrations that were I happen to know about this a little bit, that were based on skins alone. So someone would like give them a giraffe skin and be like, draw a picture of what this is. When it has meat in it, and the person was like, okay, I guess I'll try, and so they look completely whacked out. So people don't like to confuse kids that much, but it would be awesome. Oh, Alice was thrilled that Bach was named after my son. Well, you know, my son is pretty spectacular, so it was good of old Johann Bach to take his name. A Fairyland RPG. Oh, I mean, I would love an RPG based on any of my books. I'm a big RPG player myself. Ooh, is Catherine my birth name, or did I coin it? It's such a lovely spelling. Catherine is not my birth name. But I've hated my birth name since virtually I was born. I was a tiny child the first time I asked to go by my middle name, which is also not Catherine. But when I was living in Scotland, little feral cats used to follow me around all the time. So my friends started calling me Cat. So I'd been going by Cat for a little while. when I knew I was going to start trying to publish. And I remember sitting in a dorm room in Edinburgh with a guy named Matt, coming up with my name, with my pen name. Valenti is my mother's maiden name, and Catherine is absolutely not my name at all. But it seemed natural from Cat. The spelling, I have two stories about the spelling. One makes me look cool and clever, and one makes me look like a dork. So I will tell you both. One is that there's a much more famous Caterina Valenti, who was a singer with the Rat Pack. So I wanted to be able to be Googled and not confused with her. That's not true at all. It is sort of true in that is a fact, but my mother was very into numerology and tarot and all of that, and taught me about it when I was too young to have critical faculties about that sort of thing. And however you might feel about tarot, the numerology system she used is almost certainly bullshit. Linda Goodman is no one's guru. Like, it's not a thing. So I devised that spelling backwards from the number I wanted my name to be. My birth name is actually, by that book, the least fortunate number you can possibly have. It literally says change the spelling of your name. And my life was always terrible when I went by my legal name. So I picked the number I wanted, which corresponded to the tarot card of the magician. I wanted to be in charge of my life. I wanted to make my own magic. And I worked backwards to a spelling that would add up to that. I am a dork and a hippie's child. So that's the truth of that spelling. I feel a little weird about it now. I get a lot of shit for that spelling. And, back then, like, it wasn't quite as common to give actual children funky name spellings like that. So now I'm like, I could have done CM Valenti. That's probably what I should have done. But, it was done in good faith and hoping to make magic. And now I've said that and put it up on YouTube forever. You guys are all talking so fast, I'm scrolling up. Well, I'm glad that you think it looks cool. I mean, these days it's all cat, cat, cat. I used to have a good system where, like, people who called me Catherine didn't really know me, because everybody who knows me calls me Cat. But now the only person who calls me Catherine is Heath, and because my usernames are Cat Valenti everywhere, everyone calls me Cat. It worked out. I got what I wanted out of that name, so there it is. I've written one book under a pseudonym, and I certainly would write other books under pseudonyms if I needed to. And I'll tell you right now that for the first time, Instagram Live is telling me that I have 1 minute 49 seconds remaining because I have gone over time. So we will talk later. Let me do my outro stuff super fast. For the last time, this has not been an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. It is a one-woman show. You can find music based on the book at sjtucker.com. You can buy copies of these books anywhere books are sold, but please patronize your local independent bookseller. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Cat Valenti. You can catch up with the archive at Cat Valenti Live on YouTube. And you can put something in my tip jar on my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile, or my website, which is catherinemvalenti.com. You do not have to, but this has been an extraordinary undertaking, and if you are moved to give something, it would be deeply, deeply appreciated. Thank you all so very much for every night you have spent here with me. It is cherished and never to be repeated, except maybe next week. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for everything. And we will, one way or another, come out of the mouth of this weird, gross, terrible whale turtle and into the sun.